Hi, it's Crystal here, your nature-inspired relationship coach, and this is the final part of a fictional case study that I've put together for you following the journey of Jessica and Steve and them wanting to make positive changes in their relationship around some communication issues that they were having. If you haven't seen the other two parts, then go to my YouTube site, it's Crystal Woodbridge Relationship Coach, or you can go to my website and find it there, which is www.crystalwoodbridge.com. This last part in Jessica and Steve's story is all about the time and effort required to make these lasting changes. So in the previous sessions, what Jessica and Steve agreed to do was to set a relationship vision, so to think about the positive changes they wanted to make in their relationship rather than focusing on all of the negatives. They then shared those relationship visions and goals with each other to agree a way forward. And then in the second video, it was all about how they each needed to take responsibility for their part in their problems. So rather than putting blame on each other for the issues they'd had in the relationship, it was focusing on what they each needed to do individually to make things right, but also it was acknowledging what they had each contributed to the problem in the first place. So in this final stage, it's all about time and effort required to make lasting changes in your relationship, because I said before in the other videos, there are no quick fixes. If you really want to make positive changes in your relationship, it takes this time and commitment. So it's session 3 and Jessica and Steve are back, but Jessica's feeling frustrated. And I asked her what was happening, and she said, well, you know, it felt like we made a lot of progress in last week's session, but now it feels like we're back to square one. He's slipped back into his old ways of talking to me in a patronising way and telling me what to do. So I asked them what happened. So Jessica explained how Steve had criticised her again over the way she dealt with some personal work issues, and they'd ended up arguing, which was their old pattern. And Steve actually felt that that was slightly unfair. He said, I'm not denying I did that, and I was only trying to help, but when Jess pointed it out, I did back off and I apologised. But then Jess said, well, it happened the other day too. She said, you know, you were trying to tell me how to decorate and you kept interfering. And then Steve said, well, why didn't you say so? I'd have backed off if you'd said, you know, if I'd realised, but you didn't say anything and I thought I'd been helpful. So this was typical for Jessica and Steve. Jessica would often complain that Steve was being dogmatic and interfering and patronising when he was speaking to her, but because Jessica never used to express how she felt about that, Steve didn't realise that anything was wrong. So they'd slip back into their old patterns for sure. Now Steve explained that he really felt he'd been trying and really working hard to recognise when he'd slipped back into his old habits, but he didn't feel actually that Jessica was giving him credit for that or acknowledging his efforts in any way. So I asked them if they'd been practicing their new communication skills that I taught them in the previous session, and they both sheepishly admitted that they hadn't. They thought they'd done so well in the last session that they wouldn't need to. They also said there'd been no time, there'd been work issues, there'd been family commitments, decorating to do, and so on. Now this is something that comes up a lot with the couples I see for relationship coaching. There will always be 1,000,001 reasons why they can't put in place the homework tasks that I've set them. So I told them I could see 2 issues. The first one was patience. You know, one issue that was that basically Jessica was expecting quicker changes at a pace that was too fast for Steve. I highlighted that, you know, these problems have been building up for years. And I asked them to consider just how realistic it would be for them to expect to solve all of their relationship problems within just 3 weeks. I also explained that Jessica would really just basically need to be more patient with Steve. And she recognised that her habit of bottling her feelings up for years and not sharing them with Steve had actually played a significant part in maintaining Steve's behaviour, because he didn't realise how she felt, he just carried on. So I explained that while it's fantastic that Jessica now felt able to express how she felt to Steve and say what it was she wanted to be different, she really needed to give Steve time to adjust. And that's crucial. You need to give your partner time to adjust once you've made that request for positive change. She also needed to give herself time to adjust, because actually to recognise that she too had slipped back into old habits by not telling Steve how his advice had actually been impacting on her when she was decorating, and that she was being triggered in the old way. Relationship bad habits can take years to build up, and breaking them can be really hard. The second issue was commitment. For me, I just said, it really seemed as though they weren't putting a commitment in that was needed to make those positive changes last. I explained that creating and maintaining positive changes in a relationship takes daily work and commitment. It needs to be a priority. In Jessica and Steve's case, that basically meant practicing the communication skills that they had been taught every day until they felt natural. I invited them to both imagine a river that's taken the same course for decades, and it flows along the path of least resistance until it reaches its destination, which is the sea. And I explained how we're like rivers too. When we become used to thinking and acting in a certain way, it can take years for that to happen, and the more we think and act in a certain way, we start to do it automatically. And because we become used to these thoughts and habits, they just come so easily to us, and they become our path of least resistance. So that path of least resistance can either be joyful or it can be painful. But we get to choose, and this is the crucial thing, we do get to choose. It's entirely possible to reroute that river so that our thoughts and our focus become more positive. But as you might imagine, rerouting a river takes time and effort. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes patience and commitment, because we're redirecting a flow that already feels natural to us. But given time, if you make the constant efforts, that new flow can start to feel natural. In the end, I worked with Jessica and Steve over 12 sessions in total, because it's very difficult to make long-lasting changes within 3 sessions. But I'm delighted to say that they are well on their way to rerouting that relationship river of their own, and they recognise now that it takes daily time and effort. And they still come to me every now and again for top-up sessions. And why do they do that? Well, because they recognise that flagging up issues early on in the relationship can actually prevent blocks in the river becoming a crisis point. So if you need further guidance and commitment with the communication issues in your relationship, come to my website and contact me. It's www.crystalwoodbridge.com. That's KRYSTAL Woodbridge.com. There you can sign up to my relationship coaching newsletter, which is completely free, and it's always full of helpful relationship tips and advice. You can also download, if you haven't already, you can download my free communication guide for couples, which gives you all the key principles and techniques that you need to communicate effectively, empathetically and compassionately with your partner in a way that will minimise conflict escalating into an argument. Or you can just simply contact me through my website and ask me how I can help you with your particular relationship issue. I would love to hear from you. So again, that's www.crystalwoodbridge.com. That's KRYSTAL Woodbridge.com. Take care for now. Bye.